Can God have a God?
Your God
Yes.
has.
God can have a God. How many gods do you believe in?
One.
All
He
right.
refers to himself.
That's it, man.
Right.
Done.
So himself
Yeah,
is
God.
God.
God. Do you believe God is almighty?
Yeah.
Can God have an authority higher than him?
Yes, his word can. Yeah.
No, can God have authority higher than him?
I'm making
How many gods are there? Can that one God have authority higher than him?
His word can.
That
Yeah.
wasn't my question.
Yes.
Can that one
Okay, he
God
said-
have authority higher
I
than him?
just showed you. His revelation
Okay.
can be in submission
So basically
to
you're
the
telling me
source.
a God can have a God.
I can tell you his word is under submission to
Okay,
himself.
let me rephrase the question. Can God
I
have...
said yes.
I haven't even asked the question. Let me
you
rephrase
did.
the question.
Yeah.
Can God have a God?
Your God
Yes.
has.
God can have a God. How many gods do you believe in?
One.
All
He
right.
refers to himself.
That's it, man.
Right.
Done.
So himself
Yeah,
is
God.
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 Like I said, in the beginning was the word was with God, and the word was God.
Was he his God?
Yes.
So one God has another God.
You want to?
he's God to himself.
Do you want to understand?
Seriously?
He's
Listen
God to himself.
Do you want to understand biblically?
Biblically? Yeah, God.
Okay.
God.
Good.
Show me where in the Bible it says God has a God.
Oh God, your
I'll tell you,
God has
Revelation
elevated you.
Revelation chapter 1.
Psalms.
I'll write the name of my God
You're doing it again, man.
upon you.
Yeah, but you're shouting in my ear.
I'm sorry. I am sorry.
This is like the fifth time I'm telling
I'm
you.
sorry.
Let's have respect. Okay, so Revelation talks about Jesus saying, I'll write the name of my God upon your forehead.
Say again? I
I'll
didn't hear
write the
that.
name of my God.
Yeah. So you believe your God has a God?
Sure.
Okay. By the way, am I correct in understanding
Now,
that?
do you actually want my definition or the biblical definition?
Yeah, biblical definition. Okay. So in Deuteronomy 6:4, what does it say?
Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one.
Yes. How many did he say? One. Okay.
Echad.
Okay, that one God, hear Israel, your Lord, your God is one. Is that one God having another God?
Do you want me to? I've already answered your question.
Because
and
you
I already
said yes.
admitted.
If I heard it correctly,
Listen, you did hear me correctly.
if I heard it
You
correctly,
did hear me correctly.
yes, go on.
Okay, now do you want my definition?
Yeah, go on. Show me in the Bible where it says God has a God.
Okay, you asked two questions. I'm going to answer both.
Oh God, your
The Bible says in the beginning, Elohim, which is a plural form of God, created the heavens and the earth. Okay, number one. Okay, that's number one. It's a plural form of a singular God. The verbs are singular and the word is plural. Second, Deuteronomy 6:4 says, Hear, O Israel, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad is not Yachid. Yachid is a singularity that is different from Echad. They're two different words. Echad is a plural unity.
Carry on.
Okay, do you even know Hebrew?
Do you know Hebrew?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Elohim you said means always plural. Is that right?
It's a plural form of Elohim.
Does Elohim,
Elohim.
can Elohim mean singular?
It can.
It can.
It does mean singular.
Okay, it can.
It always means singular.
Okay, so-
but it's in a plural form.
So it means singular but it's in a plural form.
Yeah.
Please explain that.
Yeah, I will. Because God is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
God is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Where in the Bible does it say that?
And people might say, where? Where did we start seeing the Trinity in the Old Testament? I see it in the first verse of the first chapter of the first book of the Bible. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Well, let's take that back into the Hebrew. It says, Elohim created. Elohim is the plural of God. It's gods. In the beginning, gods. But then the word created treats that word as if it's singular. In the beginning, gods created, as if it were singular. So right there at the very beginning of the Old Testament, you have plurality and singularity in the Godhead.
Carry on.
Okay. Do you even know Hebrew?
Do you know Hebrew?
Yeah, I do.
Talk to us about that a little bit.
Okay, there are certain Hebrew words, and these words have plural endings, but they don't necessarily have plural meanings. And to use an English example, we can talk about the word news. News is a singular as well as could be a plural, but just because it has an S ending doesn't mean that we automatically assume that. So it is in Hebrew, the word for face, panim, also has a plural ending, but it is a singular word. And same thing with heaven and water, Mayim and Hashemayim, or Shemayim. So the idea of it having a plural ending doesn't necessitate a plural meaning. And besides, if Elohim did mean God in a plural sense, the plural of God is not a tripersonal God, but gods.
Yes, yeah.
And that's polytheism.
Yes.
Right? And so
Okay.
that's not very helpful for any of us to say that God is a plural. But also in Hebrew, as in many languages, probably most languages, the verb also contains a number in it, so singular or plural. And so we have good indications grammatically that Elohim is thought of as a singular when it's applied to Yahweh, the God of the Creator God, and so that's because the verb is actually singular. So it says in the beginning here of the Bible, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The word "created" there could either be a singular or plural, and it's singular, even though the word Elohim is technically a plural form. But here it has a singular meaning, and that's why every single Bible translation under the sun says God instead of gods for Elohim.
Yes, I see.
And so this is not something that we discovered on our own. This is something that's readily accessible if you check mainstream commentaries, or, for example, I looked it up in the Wycliffe Dictionary of Theology, and they say it's the plural of plenitude, and that's the idea that God is so magnificent, so majestic, so powerful, that you give him a plural form for the word God, but it has a singular meaning. For example, I looked it up in the Wycliffe Dictionary of Theology, and they say it's the plural of plenitude, and that's the idea that God is so magnificent, so majestic, so powerful, that you give him a plural form for the word God, but it has a singular meaning.
So we're talking about an amazing, wonderful individual who is God, but not individuals who are God. There's nothing in the word Elohim that would bring us to the conclusion that somehow God is multiple persons.
Right. I think with Elohim we have two options, and these are the two options the translators use. Either translate it God or gods. And frequently when pagan gods, for example, are in view, Elohim will be translated gods. But when it's Yahweh who's being spoken of, it's always translated God in every translation done by anybody that I've ever seen.
And used with the singular verbs and singular
used
pronouns.
with singular verbs. And we can also look at a parallel by looking at Dagon or Chemosh or Milcom or Asherah or Baal. We look at these other pagan gods, and they're all called Elohim too. As individuals. And so it was just a common word for God in their time, and it communicated this sense of majesty and power.
Wow, I like that. One thing I've noticed too about this idea of Elohim meaning somehow persons, this odd notion, no one in the Bible ever makes that point. No one ever says, oh, by the way, Elohim is a reference to multiple. Jesus never says such a thing. None of the apostles, none of the prophets, no one ever says that. So it seems like it's a post-biblical thing developed to support a post-biblical multiple person God idea.
Deuteronomy 6:4 says, "Hear, O Israel, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad." Echad is not Yachid. Yachid is a singularity that is different from Echad. They're two different words. Echad is a plural unity.
That word one, echad, is not used to describe a singularity. It's used to describe something like a cluster of grapes.
Complete and profound falsehood. It simply is not true. The word one is a numerical adjective which can modify any noun you like to think of. In itself, it has no concept of more than one, one pencil, one chair, one Abraham, one thing, and you could go on for the rest of your life giving examples, because one can modify, it's an adjective, it can modify any noun you like to think of, and it means one single, just exactly as it does in English. To say that when you have one family, one means more than one, is a lie. It's a falsehood. To say that if you have one tripod, one means three, is a falsehood. To say that when you have a husband and wife united as one flesh, that one really means two, is a falsehood. The plurality in that phrase, one tripod, comes from the word tripod, not from the word one. The plurality in one centipede comes from the centipede, not from the word one. Is it clear? This is an elementary language issue. But until we get clear about the meaning of one and stop disturbing our beautiful English and the Hebrew language, we will not make any progress. The fact is that one simply means one single. Abraham was one person, we read. Any item in the world, the universe you like to think of, can be modified by the word one.
That word one, echad, is not used to describe a singularity. It's used to describe something like a cluster of grapes.
But it's a profoundly misleading statement to say that echad is a compound unity noun, by which you're meant to understand that God is more than one. That's simply not true. And I appeal to all English teachers, linguists, lexicographers out there to come on board and assert with me that the word echad, one in Hebrew, is in Greek, I'm using the modern Greek pronunciation, and the word one in English means one single item.
My basic case in my book, How Jesus Became God, and that I presented last night, is as follows. I don't think that Jesus himself called himself God during his public ministry. I personally don't think Jesus imagined he was God. He wasn't God. He was God's prophet.